Well, in South Africa, Cape Town, which has seen its worst drought in a century, could run out of water by late April. Viewers, Mariama Diallo reports on what the so-called Day Zero would mean for the port city's tourism industry and its residents.
Cape Town, which attracts about 2 million tourists a year, is facing its biggest water crisis ever. Mayor Patricia de Lille warned of a dire situation as drilling into one of the major aquifers under the city began last week.
We're losing 1% of our dams, 1.5 every week. Our dams for the first time is below 30%, and I'm really worried.
Residents will have to queue for water when water levels in the dams get too low. At a trial water collection site, people fill up their water bottles but are limited to a maximum 25 liters per person per day.
While we are working as hard as we can to bring additional water on board, Cape Townians must help us to save water.
Something some residents are taking seriously as the so-called Day Zero in April approaches.
We definitely have to do our part and use as little water as possible. But I do hope that the government is doing something to prevent Day Zero, because it will be a national crisis. It will be honestly horrific.
We can't bath anymore. We must just shower, and because every other day we shower to save water. But we make do.
But one businessman wishes there were alternatives other than having to switch off all the taps and close his hotel when the city runs out of water.
There are countries in this world that have proven that there are ways to deal with drought and with desert regions. One has to look at the Middle East and see what Israel did to a desert there in respect of desalination. And India are also doing a lot of good work with desalination.
Cape Town is one of South Africa's hottest tourist destination. About 9% of the country's $33 billion economic output last year came from the tourism industry, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Now, for more on the water crisis in Cape Town, Professor Mark New, the director of the African Climate and Development Initiative at the University of Cape Town, joins me live via Skype from South Africa. Professor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Now, the critical day here is Day Zero. What needs to happen between now and then in order to avoid that day?
It's a very tricky problem because there isn't very much time before Day Zero is currently the 21st of April, so just a couple of months. And there's not very much that can be done in that time. What the city is doing is really trying to ration water use. So one of the options is actually to switch off water to certain neighborhoods for certain periods of the time, so that really forces water saving. So water saving is the one area, and then the other is trying to supplement the existing supply. And as you mentioned in your piece earlier, there are emergency boreholes being drilled into groundwater, and also portable desalination plants being brought in to try and augment that supply.
Yes.
But that really might only delay things by a few weeks or a month, and we may still have Day Zero before the rains arrive again.
Now, what really was the cause of this shortage, and what part of that is like climate change to be blamed for?
Well, we're experiencing a very unusual sequence of droughts. We've had 3 dry years in a row in our part of the country, and those 3 years have been 2 of the driest years on record, and then the other year was the 4th driest. And the way the water supply system works is it stores rainfall in the winter when the rain falls and allows it to be drawn down in the summer. So we've had this situation of each winter not enough rain falling, and so the reservoirs don't get replenished sufficiently. And then in the summer, the reservoirs are drawn down further each year, so that now by the end of this 3rd low rainfall winter, the reservoirs are at the lowest level they've ever been at the beginning of the summer and are likely to run dry because of the succession of dry years. So it's a very unusual event. Some people think that it might be something that happens only once every 1,000 years from a from a climatological point of view. We're busy trying to do work to try and understand the role of climate change in this event, but it's a very tricky process to undertake because we know that dry years have always occurred in the past due to natural variability, and we can't say that any one dry year was directly caused by climate change. What we're trying to do is calculate whether climate change has altered the risk or the likelihood of a sequence of dry years such as this occurring. And we're still at the sort of preliminary stage of analysis, but some early indications suggest that there's been perhaps a doubling of the chance of an event like this occurring because of climate change compared to the situation if climate change hadn't been experienced.
Well, Professor, thank you. We just hope other cities across Africa can learn from this challenge in Cape Town. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Mark New is the director of the African Climate and Development Initiative at the University of Cape Town.